I arrived after a 10-hour journey to celebrate my beloved grandson Tommy's 5th birthday. I was filled with excitement, carrying carefully chosen gifts and homemade treats. When I knocked on the door, my daughter-in-law Amanda answered with an immediate scowl. Before I could even step inside, Amanda turned to my son James and screamed, "Either she goes or I do." James looked at me with conflicted eyes before saying, "Mom, leave." I left without a word, devastated beyond belief, my heart shattering as the door closed. The drive home that night was even more painful than the 10-hour journey to get there. I kept replaying the moment over and over in my mind, seeing the coldness in Amanda's eyes and the weakness in my son's. How had we gotten here? James had always been my world. When my husband Robert died of a sudden heart attack, James was only 12 years old. The loss devastated us both, but somehow we found strength in each other. I worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. My days started at 4 in the morning with a cleaning job at an office building, followed by my main job as a receptionist at a dental clinic, and then evening shifts waiting tables at a local diner. The exhaustion was bone deep, but whenever I felt like giving up, I would look at James doing his homework at one of my corner tables and find the will to keep going. When James got accepted to college, I sold our small house to help pay his tuition. I downsized to a tiny apartment and picked up even more hours at the diner. I never complained because I knew education was his ticket to a better life than I had, and my sacrifices paid off. James graduated with honors and landed a good job at a marketing firm. Those years after his graduation were some of the happiest of my life. James would visit me every Sunday. We would cook together, laugh together, and sometimes just sit in comfortable silence, enjoying each other's company. When he met Amanda at a company party, I was thrilled for him. She was beautiful and charming, and James seemed so happy. Their wedding was beautiful, though looking back, there were signs even then. Amanda had opinions about everything, from the flowers to the seating arrangements. She even suggested not inviting my sister Nancy, because she thought Nancy was too loud. I brushed it off as pre-wedding stress. The changes in our relationship were subtle at first. James started canceling our Sunday dinners. When I called, Amanda would often answer and say he was busy. Eventually, our once-a-week tradition dwindled to once a month, then special occasions only. When Tommy was born 5 years ago, I was overjoyed. I rushed to the hospital with a handmade baby blanket I had spent months knitting. Amanda seemed annoyed by my presence and limited my time with the baby to just a few minutes. James apologized later, saying she was just tired from the delivery. As Tommy grew, I became more and more of a stranger in his life. I missed his first steps, his first words, his first birthday, then his second, third, and fourth. Each time there was an excuse. The party was just family, or Tommy was too overstimulated for more guests, or they were keeping it small this year. So when Amanda called me 2 days before Tommy's 5th birthday, I was surprised. Her voice was sweet, almost too sweet, as she personally invited me to the party. "Tommy has been asking about his grandma," she said. "We would love for you to come." I was cautious, but hopeful. I spent the next day baking Tommy's favorite cookies, even though I had only met him a handful of times. I carefully selected gifts I thought a 5-year-old boy would enjoy: a building set, a dinosaur book, and a stuffed tiger, since James had mentioned once that Tommy loved tigers. I wrapped each present with colorful paper and curled ribbons, imagining the delight on his little face. The morning of the party, I woke up at 4, too excited to sleep. I packed my car and set out on the long drive, my heart lighter than it had been in years. Maybe this was the olive branch our family needed. Maybe Amanda had finally realized the importance of having extended family in Tommy's life. But the moment Amanda opened that door and I saw her face, I knew something was terribly wrong. Her eyes narrowed as if she was looking at an unwelcome pest. The confusion on James's face made everything clear. In an instant, Amanda had never told him she had invited me. She had deliberately created this situation to humiliate me and drive an even deeper wedge between me and my son. As I drove away from the house, tears streaming down my face, I realized the cruel truth: this had been her plan all along. The drive home was excruciating. 10 hours of nothing but my own thoughts, and the occasional concerned glance from other drivers who could see a 65-year-old woman sobbing behind the wheel. I had to pull over several times when the tears made it impossible to see the road. I arrived home well after midnight, exhausted and hollow. My tiny apartment felt emptier than ever. The carefully wrapped presents sat in the back seat of my car. I couldn't bring myself to carry them inside. What was I supposed to do with a dinosaur book and a stuffed tiger now? The next morning, I called my sister Nancy. She had always been my rock, the one person who understood me completely. We had grown even closer after Robert died. "Christina, honey, what happened?" "I thought you were staying the weekend for Tommy's birthday," she said, instantly concerned by the sound of my voice. I told her everything, my voice breaking as I recounted Amanda's cruel trick and James's betrayal. "Oh, Chrissy," Nancy sighed, using the nickname only she was allowed to use. "I'm so sorry. That woman is poison." There was a pause on the line, and I could tell Nancy was holding something back. "What is it, Nancy? Just tell me." "I didn't want to say anything before because I thought it might cause problems," she began hesitantly. "But James and Tommy have been meeting me for lunch every couple of months when Amanda is working. James asked me not to tell anyone, especially you." My heart skipped a beat. "What? For how long?" "About a year now. Tommy calls me Great Aunt Nancy. He's such a sweet boy, Chrissy. James seems stressed, though. He rarely smiles anymore, and he keeps checking his phone like he's afraid of missing a call." I sat in stunned silence, trying to process this information. My own son was secretly meeting my sister but had asked her to keep it from me. What did that mean? "I think he's unhappy in his marriage," Nancy continued, "but he never comes out and says it. He changes the subject whenever Amanda's name comes up." Part of me wanted to confront James about these secret meetings, but I knew that would only make things worse. If he was already walking on eggshells around Amanda, my interference could push him further away. Days passed with no word from James. No apology, no explanation, nothing. Each silent day deepened the wound. I kept my phone close, jumping every time it pinged, but it was never him. I tried to distract myself by throwing my energy into community activities. I volunteered at the local library, reading to children during story hour. Each small face reminded me of what Tommy might look like now, how his eyes might light up at an exciting part of the story. The ache in my chest never subsided. A week after the birthday disaster, I packaged up Tommy's presents and sent them through the mail with a simple card. "Happy birthday, Tommy. Love, Grandma Christina." 2 weeks later, the package returned, unopened, with "return to sender" scrawled across it in what looked like Amanda's handwriting. That night, I couldn't sleep. I found myself doing something I rarely did, browsing social media. James and I were connected on Facebook, though he rarely posted anything. I scrolled through his timeline, hungry for any glimpse into his life. Instead, I found something that stopped my heart. Amanda had posted dozens of family photos, showing a smiling James and a growing Tommy at various events, holidays, vacations, family gatherings. The kind of moments I should have been part of. But what cut even deeper were the comments she'd made on several posts when friends asked about Tommy's grandmother. Sadly, my mother passed away last year, and James's mother abandoned them years ago. She's never shown any interest in being part of Tommy's life. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Amanda wasn't just keeping me away from my family, she was actively erasing me from their lives, painting me as the villain in their story. And James was allowing it. The betrayal was so deep, so complete, that something inside me hardened. The tears that had flowed so freely before dried up. In their place came a quiet resolve. If Amanda wanted to pretend I didn't exist, perhaps it was time to start building a life that didn't revolve around waiting for my son to remember I was still here. The next day, I called a real estate agent. The apartment I'd been renting since selling our family home had never felt like mine. It was just a place to exist while I waited for my real life with my family to resume. I decided it was time to find a home that was truly mine, a place where I could start fresh. I also called an old friend from my days at the dental office, Diane, who had been trying to convince me to join her book club for years. It was time to say yes to the invitations I'd been declining, to build connections that didn't depend on Amanda's whims or James's permission. For the first time in years, I was making decisions for myself, not as James's mother or Tommy's grandmother, but as Christina, just Christina. The pain didn't go away, it simply transformed into something else. something that pushed me forward instead of holding me in place. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a storm that would eventually bring my son back to me in a way I never could have anticipated. 3 weeks after Tommy's birthday, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was another telemarketer, but something made me pick up. "Christina? It's Patrick Wallace." It took me a moment to place the name. "James's college roommate?" "Yeah, that's right." Patrick sounded relieved that I remembered him. "Look, I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I got your number from James's old contact list when we were in school. I've been trying to reach him, but he barely responds to my texts anymore." Patrick had been James's closest friend throughout college. They used to spend holidays at our house when Patrick couldn't go home to Seattle. I had always liked him. His direct, honest nature reminded me of my late husband. "What's going on, Patrick?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. "That's what I'm trying to figure out. I was in town last month for a conference, and I stopped by to see James and meet his kid. He seemed different, not like himself at all. He was jumpy, checking his phone constantly. When Amanda came home early from wherever she'd been, he practically flinched." Patrick paused, seeming unsure whether to continue. "Go on," I encouraged. "He borrowed money from me. A lot of money. Said it was for an investment opportunity, but he was so vague about it. And last week, Mike, from our old study group, told me James had asked him for a loan, too. It's not like him, Christina. The James I knew was always responsible about money, almost to a fault." After talking with Patrick, I spent the next few days reaching out to other friends and family who might have had recent contact with James. The picture that emerged was deeply troubling. 3 different friends confirmed he had borrowed money from them. My cousin, who lived in the same town as James, mentioned seeing him at the grocery store, looking haggard and distracted. I couldn't ignore the growing feeling that something was very wrong in my son's life. Despite the pain of our last encounter, I knew I had to do something. The following Monday, I packed a small suitcase and drove back to James's town. I checked into a modest hotel and called my old friend Judy, who lived nearby. Judy and I had worked together at the dental office years ago, and she had retired to the same town where James now lived. "Stay with me," she insisted when I called. "That hotel will cost you a fortune, and I have plenty of room." Judy had always been a force of nature, independent and strong-willed. Her husband had left her for a younger woman 20 years ago, and she had rebuilt her life with remarkable resilience. Her home was warm and inviting, just like her personality. "So what's the plan?" she asked over coffee the next morning. "Are you going to confront James?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I need to understand what's happening first." And so began my unofficial investigation. Judy's house was just a few blocks from Tommy's elementary school. The first morning, we sat in her car at a distance, watching as parents dropped off their children. At 8:15 exactly, James's silver sedan pulled up. Even from a distance, I could see how thin he looked, how his clothes seemed to hang on his frame. Tommy bounded out of the car with the energy only a 5-year-old can possess, but James moved slowly, like a much older man. "He looks terrible," Judy whispered, squeezing my hand. For 3 days, I observed from a distance, trying to piece together what was happening with my son and his family. I saw James drop off and pick up Tommy. I noted that Amanda was never with them for these routine tasks. On the 3rd afternoon, I followed Amanda after she left their house around noon. I felt ridiculous, like a character in a detective show, but my concern for James and Tommy outweighed my embarrassment. Amanda drove to an upscale shopping mall on the other side of town. I watched from behind a display of handbags as she spent hundreds of dollars on clothing and jewelry, swiping a credit card without hesitation. For someone whose husband was borrowing money from friends, she seemed to have no financial concerns. The real shock came when she left the mall. Instead of heading home, Amanda drove to a hotel near the interstate. She parked and walked inside, checking her appearance in a compact mirror before entering. I waited in my car, unsure what to do next. 30 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up, and a man in an expensive suit got out. He looked around furtively before heading inside. My hands shook as I picked up my phone and took several pictures of the man and his car, including his license plate. I didn't know what I was going to do with this information, but instinct told me it might be important. I followed Amanda for 2 more days, documenting her shopping sprees and her meetings at the hotel with the same man. Each time, she spent exactly 1 hour inside before leaving, usually looking pleased with herself. On the final day of my investigation, I made a critical mistake. While watching Amanda exit a boutique with several bags, I wasn't paying attention to my surroundings and bumped right into a man coming around the corner. "I'm so sorry," I started to say, then froze when I realized who it was: Bill Hawkins, James's boss. I had met him at James's company Christmas party years ago. Recognition dawned in his eyes. "Christina? James's mom?" I fumbled for an explanation. "Yes, hello, Bill. I'm just in town visiting a friend." Bill's expression changed from surprise to concern. "How is James doing? We've all been worried about him at the office." "Worried? Why?" Bill hesitated. "Well, he's been calling in sick a lot lately. Performance is slipping. It's not like him." I nodded, uncertain how much to reveal about my own concerns. "The thing is," Bill continued, lowering his voice, "I know he's not actually sick. I saw him at the children's hospital in the city last week when my nephew was there for a checkup. James was with his son, but he didn't see me. I didn't mention it to anyone at work, but he trailed off, looking uncomfortable." "The children's hospital?" My heart started racing. "Tommy is sick?" "I assumed you knew," Bill said, looking even more uncomfortable now. "Listen, I should probably get going. Please don't mention to James that I told you this. I respect his privacy, but since you're his mother," I thought. "Of course. Thank you for telling me, Bill." As I watched him walk away, my mind was reeling. Tommy was sick, seriously sick, if they were going to the specialized children's hospital in the city, and James was keeping it secret, even from his workplace. Suddenly, the borrowed money, James's exhausted appearance, and his strained behavior made terrible sense. My grandson was ill, and my son was struggling to cope both emotionally and financially. And instead of turning to me for support, he was shouldering this burden alone while his wife continued her shopping sprees and hotel rendezvous. "Of course. Thank you for telling me, Bill." It was James. "Mom?" James's voice was barely recognizable, hollow and strained. "James," I replied, trying to keep my own voice steady. "How are you?" There was a long pause, filled only with the sound of his ragged breathing. "Not good, Mom. I'm really not good." The raw pain in his voice broke through any remaining anger I might have harbored. This was my child, hurting, and nothing else mattered. "Tell me what's wrong," I said softly. "Let me help." Another pause. "I need to borrow some money." His voice was so low I could barely hear him. "A lot of money." "How much?" $65,000. I gasped despite myself. It was almost everything I had in my savings after selling the house. "That's a very significant amount, James. Can you tell me what it's for?" He hesitated again, and I could almost feel him debating how much to reveal. "It's Tommy," he finally said, his voice breaking. "He's sick. Really sick." Even though Bill had already tipped me off, hearing it confirmed by James sent a wave of dread through me. "What's wrong with him?" "He has a rare kidney condition. The treatments he's been getting aren't working as well as we hoped. There's a specialized procedure, experimental but promising. Insurance won't cover it because it's not standard protocol yet." "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, trying to keep any accusation out of my voice. James broke down then, sobbing in a way I hadn't heard since he was a little boy. "I don't know, Mom. Everything's been so messed up. Amanda said we could handle it ourselves. She said she was getting a promotion at work, that we'd have the money. And the promotion fell through. Or, I don't know if it was ever real. Amanda's been acting strange for months now, secretive. She keeps saying everything's under control, but our savings are gone, all of it. And she still keeps spending like nothing's wrong." I took a deep breath, deciding to risk asking directly. "James, is Amanda gambling?" The shocked silence told me I'd hit a nerve. "How did you know?" he finally whispered. "Just a guess," I lied, not wanting to reveal my investigation. "It's a common cause of secretive financial problems." "It started small, just online betting on sports games," James said, the words pouring out of him now. "Then it got bigger, casinos. She'd be gone all night sometimes. When I confronted her, she swore she was winning more than losing, that she was doing it for us, for Tommy." The pieces were falling into place, but I suspected there was even more to the story. James, do you think Amanda might be having an affair? Another long silence. I found texts, he finally admitted, from someone named Michael. They were explicit. When I asked her about it, she said I was paranoid, that he was a work colleague helping her secure the promotion. His voice hardened slightly. I wanted to believe her. For Tommy's sake. I understand, I said. And I did. It's amazing what we can convince ourselves of when the truth is too painful to face. So, the money, James continued. Can you help us? I wouldn't ask if it wasn't for Tommy. The doctors say this procedure could make a huge difference, but we have to move quickly. I need some time to think, I replied carefully. Not about whether to help Tommy, that's never in question, but about how to make sure the money actually goes to his medical care. What does that mean? James asked, sounding defensive. It means I love you and Tommy, and I want to make sure any help I provide actually helps. Let me make some calls. Figure out the best way to do this. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? After hanging up, I sat in silence for a long time. My grandson was seriously ill. My son was in a marriage falling apart due to addiction and infidelity, and they needed financial help that could drain my retirement savings. I needed to proceed carefully. What does that mean? James asked, sounding defensive. What Alan, my PI friend, discovered over the next 24 hours exceeded even my worst suspicions. Amanda hadn't just been gambling and having an affair. She had been embezzling funds from her workplace, a small marketing firm where she managed the accounts. The Michael from the texts was not just her lover, but possibly her accomplice. Most disturbing of all, Alan discovered something that made my blood run cold. The community where James and Amanda lived had held a fundraiser for Tommy's medical treatment 3 months earlier. Over $70,000 had been raised, but there was no record of that money being paid to any medical facility. It had been deposited into an account that Amanda controlled, and withdrawn in large sums shortly after. I was sitting at Judy's kitchen table, staring at the documents Alan had sent me, when my phone pinged with a news alert from the local paper in James's town. The headline made my heart stop. Local marketing firm reports possible embezzlement, employee under investigation. The article didn't name names, but it mentioned the company was working with authorities to investigate financial irregularities discovered during a routine audit. Given what Alan had uncovered, it was only a matter of time before Amanda would be facing criminal charges for the embezzlement and potentially for misusing the fundraiser money as well. My son wasn't just in a failing marriage, he was unwittingly tied to someone who might soon be facing prison time. And my innocent grandson, already battling a serious illness, was caught in the middle of this nightmare. I needed to act fast, not just for Tommy's medical needs, but to help James see the full truth before it was too late. I spent the night organizing all the information Alan had provided, creating a clear timeline of Amanda's deceptions. In the morning, I texted James asking to meet him for coffee at a small cafe near his office. I arrived early, securing a quiet table in the corner where we could speak privately. When James walked in, the sight of him nearly broke my heart. His once vibrant blue eyes were dull and shadowed by dark circles. He'd lost so much weight that his wedding ring looked loose on his finger. He was only 38, but at that moment, he looked well into his 50s. "Mom," he said, embracing me awkwardly before sitting down. "Have you made a decision about the money?" I took a deep breath. "Before we talk about that, there are some things you need to know." Carefully, I slid the folder across the table. "This contains information about Amanda that you may find difficult to believe, but it's all verified, James. Multiple sources, financial records, photographs." James stared at the folder like it might bite him. "What is this?" "The truth," I said simply. "About the gambling, the affair with Michael, and something much worse, embezzlement from her company, and possibly misuse of Tommy's fundraiser money." His face drained of color. "Fundraiser money? What are you talking about?" "You didn't know?" My suspicion was confirmed. He had been kept in the dark. There was a community fundraiser for Tommy 3 months ago. It raised over $70,000. James shook his head slowly. "No, that's not possible. Amanda would have told me." "Open the folder, James." With trembling hands, he began to look through the documents. I had organized them chronologically: photos of Amanda entering and leaving the hotel with Michael, bank statements showing large withdrawals coinciding with her gambling activities, records of the fundraiser including photos of Amanda accepting the check, and finally, news clippings about the embezzlement investigation that didn't name her yet but described her position precisely. As he turned each page, James's expression cycled through disbelief, confusion, anger, and finally, a devastating realization. When he looked up at me, his eyes were filled with tears. "All this time," he whispered, "all this time I've been protecting her, making excuses for her, and she's been—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "I know this is overwhelming," I said gently, "but with Tommy's health at stake, you needed to know." Suddenly, his expression hardened. "How did you get all this? Have you been spying on us?" The accusation stung, but I understood it came from a place of pain and embarrassment. "After what happened at Tommy's birthday, I was worried about you. Friends had mentioned you were borrowing money. You looked unwell. I came to town to check on you, and yes, I observed Amanda's activities. So you followed her? Hired someone to investigate her? What gave you the right?" His voice was rising, attracting glances from nearby tables. "James, please." "No. You've never liked Amanda. You've always been looking for reasons to criticize her. Maybe she has problems, but this?" He gestured at the folder. "This is invasion of privacy. This is you trying to control my life again." The unfairness of his accusation hit me like a physical blow. "Control your life?" "James, I worked 3 jobs to put you through college. I sold our home so you could graduate without debt. When have I ever tried to control you? You've always been overprotective, always hovering. Maybe Amanda was right. Maybe you are trying to undermine our marriage out of some sick jealousy." I sat back, stunned by his words. The cafe had gone quiet, everyone pretending not to listen to our argument. "I think you should leave," James said coldly, closing the folder. "James, please. Tommy needs help. Whatever you think of me or my motives, these documents are real. Amanda is not who you think she is." I said leave. He pushed the folder back toward me, but I left it on the table. "Keep it," I said quietly, standing up. "Read it again when you're calmer. And James, I love you. I always have and I always will. Nothing will change that." He didn't respond, staring down at his untouched coffee as I gathered my purse and walked out of the cafe, tears blurring my vision. Back at Judy's house, I collapsed on the guest bed and let the tears flow freely. Had I made a terrible mistake? Should I have just given James the money without revealing what I knew about Amanda? No, I couldn't have lived with myself if I'd done that. Tommy's well-being was at stake, and James deserved to know the truth, however painful. Hours later, as dusk was falling, my phone rang. "James, I'm sorry," were his first words. "I shouldn't have said those things to you." "It's okay," I said, relief washing over me. "No, it's not okay. None of this is okay." His voice was steadier now, but filled with a quiet despair. I read everything again. Called the hospital about the fundraiser. They have no record of receiving any donation in Tommy's name. "Oh, James." I confronted Amanda when she got home, showed her the documents. He paused, his breath catching. "She didn't even deny it, Mom. She just got angry that I'd found out. Said I was always holding her back, that she deserved more than what I could give her." "I'm so sorry, sweetheart." "There's more," he said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "When I told her I knew about the fundraiser money, she packed a bag and left. Said since I obviously chose you over her, I could deal with everything on my own now." Another pause. "She's gone, Mom. She took what was left in our joint account. All I found was a note saying, 'You chose your mother over me, now deal with it alone.'" My heart sank for my son, even as a small part of me felt vindicated. "Where's Tommy now?" "Asleep upstairs. He doesn't know yet. I don't know how to tell him his mother just abandoned him while he's sick." "I'm coming over," I said, already reaching for my shoes. "Right now." "Please," James replied, his voice breaking. "Please do." I moved into James's guest room that very night. The house was beautiful from the outside, grand and impressive, the kind of home featured in magazines. Inside, it told a different story. Expensive furniture was juxtaposed with past due notices hidden in drawers. Designer clothes filled Amanda's closet while the pantry was nearly empty. It was a house built on appearances and deception. Tommy was confused and upset by his mother's absence. James told him that Mommy had to go away for work for a while, a gentle fiction to protect him from the harsh reality. At 5 years old, Tommy was old enough to sense the tension, but too young to understand its cause. The first few days were awkward. Tommy didn't really know me. His grandmother had been just a concept to him, not a real person in his life. He was shy around me, watching me curiously from behind furniture or doorways. I gave him space, never pushing myself on him. Instead, I focused on practical matters, finding Tommy's medical records, contacting his doctors, understanding exactly what we were dealing with. The news wasn't good. Tommy had a rare condition called focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, FSGS, which was causing his kidneys to function poorly. The standard treatments weren't working as well as hoped, and his doctors were recommending a specialized treatment available only through a clinical trial. The procedure costs about $65,000, Dr. Reeves explained during our consultation. Insurance won't cover experimental treatments, unfortunately. And the success rate? I asked. For children Tommy's age, with his specific variant of FSGS, about 70% show significant improvement. It's not a cure, but it could give his kidneys years more function, possibly until adulthood when other options become more viable. I nodded, taking careful notes. How soon would you want to do this? As soon as possible. Tommy's kidney function has declined 15% in the last 3 months. We don't want to wait until he needs dialysis. After the appointment, I called an old nursing school friend, Marion, who now worked as an administrator at the prestigious Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. It had been years since we'd spoken regularly, but she responded to my desperate message immediately. "Christina, I think I can help," she said after I explained the situation. "We have one of the top pediatric nephrologists in the country here, Dr. Landry. Let me see if I can get Tommy's records to her for a second opinion." While we waited for Dr. Landry's assessment, Tommy's condition began to deteriorate. He was constantly tired, his eyes puffy, his appetite poor. One night, I found James sitting on the floor outside Tommy's bedroom, silently crying. "I can't lose him, Mom," he whispered as I sat down beside him. "He's everything to me." "We're not going to lose him," I promised, pulling my son close like I used to when he was small. "We're going to fight this together." Meanwhile, Amanda's workplace had officially filed charges against her for embezzlement. The local paper now named her explicitly, describing how she had diverted nearly $200,000 over 3 years. The article mentioned the fundraiser money as well, indicating that the district attorney was considering additional fraud charges. 2 weeks after Amanda left, James received divorce papers from her lawyer. Despite everything, she was demanding alimony and a portion of their assets. The audacity was breathtaking. "She can't possibly think a court would award her anything after what she's done," James said in disbelief as we reviewed the papers. I helped James find a good attorney, Beth Simmons, who specialized in complicated divorces involving criminal elements. Beth was confident and reassuring. "With the criminal charges pending against Amanda, her claims won't get far," Beth explained. "In fact, we should file a countersuit for the misappropriated fundraiser money. That belongs to Tommy for his medical care." While the legal battle was beginning, Dr. Landry from Philadelphia called with her assessment. "I've reviewed Tommy's case," she said. "I believe he would be an excellent candidate for our newer procedure. It's less invasive than what's being proposed locally, with a shorter recovery time and slightly better outcomes in children his age." "What about the cost?" I asked. "It's comparable, around $60,000. But I have some good news. We have a foundation that provides grants for exactly these situations. I can't promise anything, but Tommy might qualify for partial assistance." For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. We scheduled an appointment in Philadelphia for the following week, and I began making travel arrangements. The night before we were set to leave, I received a call from my own attorney, Martin Goldman, who had been handling my finances since Robert died. "Christina, I've been reviewing your late husband's estate documents as you requested," Martin said, "and I found something quite remarkable." "What is it?" "Robert set up a medical trust before he died. It was specifically designated for family medical emergencies, with you as the trustee. The strange thing is, this trust was never properly disclosed to you at the time of his death. It seems to have been overlooked in the probate process." My heart began to race. Is there money in this trust? Yes, quite a substantial amount. The initial funding was $50,000, but with 23 years of conservative investment growth, it now stands at approximately $65,000. I gasped. $65,000? That's exactly what we need for Tommy's treatment. Yes, it's rather remarkable. Almost as if Robert somehow knew this day would come. That night, I sat alone in the guest room, looking at an old photograph of Robert. It was taken on a camping trip when James was just 7 years old. Robert had his arm around our son, both of them grinning widely as they displayed a small fish they'd caught together. "You're still taking care of us," I whispered to the photo. "After all these years, you're still watching over your family." The next morning, as we prepared to leave for Philadelphia, Tommy approached me cautiously, holding something behind his back. "Grandma Christina?" he said. It was the first time he had called me Grandma instead of Miss Christina, and my heart swelled. "Yes, sweetheart?" He pulled out a slightly crumpled drawing and handed it to me. "I made this for you." The picture showed 3 stick figures holding hands, a tall one labeled Daddy, a small one labeled Tommy, and a medium one labeled Grandma. Above them was a bright yellow sun with a smiling face. "It's beautiful," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Tommy." He hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward and hugged me quickly before running back to his room. I looked up to see James watching from the doorway, tears in his eyes. "He never warmed up to Amanda's mother like that, even after years of knowing her," he said softly. "Kids can sense who truly loves them," I replied. As we loaded the car for our trip to Philadelphia, I felt a strange sense of peace despite the challenges ahead. Whatever happened with Tommy's treatment, with Amanda's legal troubles, with James's divorce, we would face it together, as a family. And for the first time in years, that word family felt whole and real again. Tommy's procedure at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia was scheduled for a crisp autumn morning. The medical team led by Dr. Landry was confident and reassuring, explaining each step of the process to us in detail. I used Robert's medical trust to pay for the treatment, a legacy of love from a grandfather Tommy had never known. "He's going to do great," Dr. Landry assured us as the nurses prepared to take Tommy to the operating room. "He's young and resilient, and we caught this before permanent damage occurred." Tommy looked so small in the hospital bed, clutching the stuffed tiger I had originally bought for his birthday and had given to him after moving in. Despite his fear, he tried to be brave. "Will it hurt?" he asked in a small voice. James knelt beside the bed, smoothing Tommy's hair back from his forehead. "Just a little at first, buddy, but the doctors will make sure you're comfortable. And when you wake up, Grandma and I will be right here waiting for you. Promise?" "Promise," we both said in unison. James considered the question carefully. Sad for what could have been, angry at myself for being so blind, but mostly relieved. "It's over. We can move forward now." "The procedure went perfectly," she announced. "Tommy's responding well. We were able to address more of the affected tissue than we initially hoped." The relief was overwhelming. James and I held each other, both of us crying tears of joy and release after weeks of tension. Tommy's recovery would be a journey, 6 to 8 weeks of careful monitoring and medication adjustments, but the prognosis was excellent. We rented a small furnished apartment near the hospital for the recovery period, creating a temporary home filled with Tommy's drawings and the few toys we'd brought from home. Back in our hometown, the legal consequences for Amanda were mounting. Her embezzlement case had expanded to include charges of wire fraud, identity theft, and misappropriation of charitable funds. Michael, her lover, had turned state's evidence against her in exchange for a reduced sentence, revealing that the affair and financial crimes had been going on for nearly 2 years. James's attorney Beth was brilliant, using the criminal charges to dismantle Amanda's divorce demands. Not only did the judge deny her any alimony, but he ordered her to repay the misappropriated fundraiser money and James's portion of their joint savings. The divorce was finalized with remarkable speed, given the circumstances. When Amanda's criminal case finally went to trial 3 months later, James made the difficult decision to attend, seeking closure. "Do you want me to come with you?" I asked the night before. He shook his head. "No, I need to do this alone. Tommy needs one of us here with him anyway." Tommy looked so small in the hospital bed, clutching the stuffed tiger I had originally bought for his birthday and had given to him after moving in. Despite his fear, he tried to be brave. "Do you want me to come with you?" I asked the night before. "How do you feel?" I asked gently. When he returned that evening, there was a new steadiness in his demeanor, as if a weight had been lifted. Moving forward meant many changes. James's company had been understanding about his absences during Tommy's illness, but the office was too full of painful memories of Amanda, who had met James there. When a position opened up at the Philadelphia branch, James applied and was accepted. "We don't have to go back," he told me one evening as we watched Tommy playing with other children in the apartment complex's small playground. His color had returned, his energy levels almost back to normal. We could start fresh here. The relief was overwhelming. James and I held each other, both of us crying tears of joy and release after weeks of tension. "I'm selling it. Too many bad memories, too much of Amanda in every room." He looked at me carefully. "What do you think, Mom? Would you consider moving to Philadelphia too? There are some nice smaller homes in the suburbs. You could be close to us without being right on top of us." The offer brought tears to my eyes. After years of being kept at arm's length, my son was asking me to be part of his daily life again. "I'd like that very much," I said. 6 months after Tommy's procedure, we had all relocated to the Philadelphia area. James and Tommy moved into a bright, cheerful house with a backyard perfect for a growing boy. I found a small cottage just 10 minutes away, cozy, manageable, and all mine. Tommy continued to improve, exceeding even Dr. Landry's optimistic predictions. James thrived in his new position, gradually regaining his confidence and natural optimism. And I discovered a new purpose volunteering at the Children's Hospital, offering support to other grandparents whose grandchildren were facing medical crises. One evening, almost a year after the fateful birthday party that had set everything in motion, James and Tommy came over for our weekly dinner. As I set the table, I overheard Tommy asking his father a question. "Dad, why didn't Grandma Christina live with us before? Why didn't I know her when I was little?" James was quiet for a moment, and I paused, curious how he would answer. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," he finally said. "I made a big mistake by keeping you and Grandma apart. I listened to the wrong person, and I hurt both of you by doing that. I'm very sorry for that mistake." "Is that why you were crying that night?" Tommy asked. "The night before we went to the hospital?" "Yes, partly," James admitted. "I was scared about your operation, but I was also sad about all the time we'd lost with Grandma. I felt ashamed that I had pushed her away when she only wanted to love us." "But she forgave you," Tommy said with the simple wisdom of children. "Yes, she did," James agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "And that's one of the most important lessons I've learned. Family doesn't keep score." I recognized my own words, the 5 words I had said to James when he'd asked how he could ever repay me for helping with Tommy's treatment. Family doesn't keep a score. I stepped into the dining room then, pretending I hadn't overheard. "Dinner's ready, you two. Tommy, would you like to say grace tonight?" Tommy nodded solemnly. As we held hands around the table, my grandson's sweet voice filled the room with gratitude for food, for healing, for family. Later that evening, as James was helping me clean up, he suddenly stopped and pulled me into a tight hug. "What was that for?" I asked, surprised. "For never giving up on me," he said simply. "Even when I gave up on you." 1 year later, we celebrated Tommy's 7th birthday with a proper party at a local park. Tommy was completely healthy, his condition in remission with excellent long-term prospects. James had been promoted at work and was dating a kind kindergarten teacher named Sarah, and I had found a community of friends through my volunteer work and local church. As I watched Tommy blow out his candles, surrounded by new friends and a few old ones who had made the trip from our hometown, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From rejection and heartbreak to reconciliation and healing, from a grandmother denied access to her grandson to an integral part of his daily life. Sometimes the deepest wounds lead to the most beautiful healing. Sometimes the most painful rejections open doors to unexpected blessings. And sometimes, when a son says, "Mom, leave," it's only the beginning of a story that ends with, "Mom, please stay." Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between protecting someone's feelings and telling them a hard truth they needed to hear? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to be reminded that family bonds can survive even the most difficult challenges. Thank you for listening. And remember that sometimes our greatest strength comes after our most painful moments.